Alright, let's look at this face. I'm just gonna go through and do some things. Overall, I think you've started a good structure. I think there's a few things that you could do to improve it. I'm gonna start by pulling the eyes out a little bit, outlining this a bit more. Oops, switch to it. Damn standard, and making it go up into the nostril a bit. I think you could probably move these out. Or actually, not move them out, but move this. Oh, I need to. Apologies. Let me mirror and weld. Make sure we have our symmetry on. And this needs to be a lot thinner. Doesn't need to be that big. And then here you have small cavity. You don't need to worry about it too much. And this goes around like this. Let me pull this out. I'm not worried about that too much at the moment, but yeah, just pushing that in a little bit, and you can kind of push it in a bit so you get this little bit of a starting point. The mouth you can pull out quite significantly. You can pull it out to somewhere like here, and make sure you pull out the sides as well. And I'm gonna just smooth this so it's not there to start with. And I'm just gonna smooth this like this. Just leave that. And this is fine that you have this here. But your chin, if I show you your skeleton, so let's say that this is your mouth here. It goes like that, right? And then you have like this, something like that, right? This will go down here, this will go there. And you have the thing, and you have your jaw. But your jaw would not. You need a bit of a chin. You need a bit of a chin. See this? This shape is more. You can soften it as well. You could keep it round, but you want to make sure that you do have a chin that's a bit wider at least. And you can kind of, when you first figure out, oh, okay, this is how the chin is, then you can kind of pinch it and create more of a stylized effect. But you were telling me you wanted to define the jaw a bit more, so do something like this, and now you have a bit of thing going here. Remember what I said about the zygomatic process? So the zygomatic process goes like this, right? So your ears right now don't really make much sense, so I'm going to actually just smooth them out because I don't want them to be there. I'm just going to smooth them out and not worry about them at this exact moment. Instead, I'm going to look at where the eyes are, right? And I'm going to create this zygomatic process just for me to be able to see where it is. And then here you have your actual, I forgot what it was. This is the zygo something. It's the thing itself, right? It goes forward and it forms here, right? And your mouth is somewhere there, but we're not going to draw it in yet. And your ear will start from somewhere here. So your jaw can actually start much higher. It can start somewhere here and then go down. And now this has a much more interesting angular shape. Just gonna check that I'm recording. I am. Much more interesting angular shape. Alright. And if you wanted to, you could like move a bit of this down. So now you have more, but I'm just gonna leave it. And your ear, let me grab clay. Get rid of this. Oh, RGB, take that off. Your clay can be here, and this is kind of where your ear is going to be. You don't need to make a hole or anything. I'm just marking it so you make sure you see it. And this is your zygomatic, and then your jaw comes from here. You have kind of like this thing going on. But we're not going to draw in the jaw. I just wanted to outline where these things are. And you can see that this is your cheekbone. Your zygomatic process connects to the zygomatic area, and this is your cheekbone. And now here, this is where your jaw is. You can actually indent a little bit. So I'm just gonna take away a little bit and then smooth that out. And your jaw, let me smooth that out as well. You can grab Trim Dynamic and hold Alt, or H Polish and hold Alt, and you can like buff out some areas that have little gaps in them, like here. Now here, your jaw. So in a really buff dude, they have like a thick jaw, and that connects to your zygomatic process. But here you don't need to be that expressive, but you can if you want to create a bit of a connection to the zygomatic process. And just so you get this tiny bit of difference in value in that area. And the side here, I'm gonna do the ear in a moment. Just thinking where I could take this. So here you see that you have this whole area of your head now that's kind of empty, and this could be taken up by the neck, and if not, you could take away a lot of this and leave more of a space for when you connect the neck properly to the head. And like we were saying before, you have this area back here that has a bit of a thing sticking out, and that would be where your sternomastoid connects to your neck. So but this is stylized, so you know, you might have more of an anime head, which is you know, a bit just round and then has a cylinder connection to the neck and stuff. You don't need to, and I'm showing you a lot of this stuff that's a little bit realistic, but of course for you, when you're doing stylized, you'll be more concerned with having these nice sharp edges that I'm making with the pinch brush right now, making sure your silhouette is nice and expressive. And right now I'm noticing as well your jaw is very close in, and you want to pull it out a little bit so you get this jaw shape, right? So pulling that jaw out a little bit, and now that connection is also just a teeny bit more meaningful as well. It's also a bit closer, it's easier to notice. I'm being very light with my pen. Now I'm not actually going to put these lines in, because something else about sculpting is you don't want to put in information that doesn't do anything. You don't want to just add stuff for the sake of using your pen. Anything you add to the face has to have a purpose. So right now I'm pulling these in to make more of this skull shape, and flattening this a little bit so it again supports this skull shape, and I have this kind of mouth area. And this is kind of, if you suck your cheeks in, you might notice like how you have empty space because your teeth are in there, and again this makes you look very thin, but now I feel like I can probably add this a bit more, this connection, and it makes a bit more sense. And when we add the mouth as well, and I'm going to add a little bit of space here for where I'm going to add the mouth, all of this is going to make a bit more sense. Now here for the eyes are tricky. Right now you have your orbit, which is the area of the skull that has that hole, which is where the eye goes, right? And you want to put your eye in there, and over that you can turn on transparency. You want to essentially paint the eye, and you can do it closed or you can do it open. If you're doing realistic characters, usually you'd paint a closed eye, kind of like this, and you'd kind of blend it with the rest of the body. Let me turn off transparency, and you can add like a little line for your eyelids, and you could use, I'm not using it now, but you can use smooth directional, right? And notice I'm adding this little thing here, and this kind of creates this interesting thing, and you want this to be a bit thicker as well, and that will connect down here and form some of the forms of the face. And I think I do want to use smooth directional for this, because I don't want to ruin other areas. You need to pay attention to where your actual bone is, so there, and that's where the nose comes from, so we can probably like pull this part a little bit further out. And now you can notice, my nose is very close to the face from the side, so I'm going to pull the nose out a little bit, and you can notice also it's very long here, so I'm going to pull it down, and I'm going to push this in a little, and then I can pull this in a little, and all this stuff, and it's just noodling it around a little bit to make sure it looks how it's supposed to. Now also, whilst you're working on the face, you do want to have perspective on, because it does make a bit of a difference. Oh gosh, this nostril area is a bit tricky, isn't it? Okay. Said you want to pinch this, pull this down, something like that. Okay, we'll leave the nose for now. We can refine it further when we kind of figure out more of what we're doing with the rest of the body. And as you saw, I added the eyelashes the eyes here, and with damn standard you can do some interesting stuff. Here you can add a bit more of these eye folds, and from the back as well. And again, I use trim dynamic or H polish to blend this by holding Alt. If you ever see that little minus next to my cursor, that's me holding Alt. And I think someone was asking me as well, make sure you put this on so you guys can see it. So now I have this little thing at the bottom here, and you can see what I'm pressing. So I'm holding Alt and dragging. Right. Now here we can blend this a little bit now. We don't need it that harsh. The eyes, you want these to bulge out a little bit, because that's your eyeball. It's going to bulge out a bit. I can see that they're a little bit slumped down at the moment, so I'm going to pull them up. And don't worry if it clips with your eyes a bit. You are changing it quite significantly at the moment. Excuse me. And then you have this. Let me smooth it. It's all right. Okay. Now something else you can do. You see we had added this line a bit that comes down here, and you can also add. You can also add a line going up through the eyebrow. You can soften it a bit, and it's kind of like this butterfly look almost. Also with the brow, we can add actual brow. So if we do this in the center, right, and then I think it's the rest. You have quite a good like base for the orbits actually. So I think I can leave the rest and just smooth this a bit, make sure it blends well. And I could also at this point move the scope back a little because it's actually quite bulbous. Oops. I can move it back a bit and have a bit of a slant on the skull, and I can move the back of it down as well a little bit and leave the very top being the very top. I'm not making it too flat. And you had a pretty good skull shape to begin with, I think. I got rid of your ears, and that made it very clear that you had an alright skull shape. And that's okay. So now let's move to the mouth. The mouth is very, very straightforward if you know the technique. So here we have damn standard. I'm going to, I've pulled out the mouth a little bit, and it can be pulled out a bit more possibly. And I'm going to, I'm gonna do this with, let me try a few. So it's been a while since I've done the mouth. Damn. Okay. Let me look at it. Let me remember. So the middle of your eye is about where it would start, and you can draw in. And I should use some reference, I just realized, for this. So you should too. You should kind of, let me look at some reference. I'll bring some up. I have some that I want to look at. And I won't look at just people. Something you can look at, if you type in clay sculpture mouth, you get some nice, you can see some nice actual exaggerated forms, and you can take a look at how it works. And I'll get back to how this actually works and is structured in a bit to give you an idea. But let me also look at some stylized characters that I know about, that I like looking at. So let me go to my collections, and also these are public collections, anyone can access them. I've just been making them over time. Let me go all the way down. I think let me look at this character for a moment. Okay, let me look at, scroll down again, let me look at her for a moment as well. Just want to see what they've done. Okay, and let me just look at one of mine as well. It's good to look at reference, it's good to look at other people's work, it's good to look at your own work after you've done it a few times, to just remember the process, because there's a lot of process. Okay, let's give it a go. Let me go here, damn standard, and do this. And it's gonna look a bit weird in the beginning, we also need to, let me just look again. Yeah, we also need to like push this down a bit, just a little bit, and smooth, and that's fine. We have a bit of a flatness here, and I'll address that in a moment. Okay, then you can hold Alt and you can do the top part and the bottom part, right? And it looks a bit funny. That's because we need to pull it out a bit, and we need to do some extra work on it as well. So I liked how it looked without the mouth, and now I have to essentially make the mouth work for the rest of it. And see how it's sticking out and we have this thing? That's because we need to go in, and now we need to add the volume here. It's going to essentially create this crease and difference in surface detail there. And it's not going to look great from the beginning, because essentially you're going to have to actually fine-tune it to look how you want. But first we're just putting in the shapes to make sure that we do in fact have a mouth. And of course, if there's a specific character you're looking for, it is useful also to probably look at the Overwatch mouth, since this is for a student who has a project in Overwatch. She looks very old now. She does look very old. We're going to need to make some adjustments. But for now, it's okay. For this exact moment, it's okay. So the mouth actually, like, your lips are actually the inside of your mouth. They're just sticking out. So they're not like, you have to create this effect of essentially your face peeling open, right? Because that's what's actually kind of happening. And I think here I can, let me, okay, something like that. Let me position it a bit higher. It's quite low at the moment. I have to be careful because I don't like using move to reposition facial features, but at this moment I'm just doing it, kind of fudging it a little bit. So it's for the sake of putting it together. Let me just look at some reference and this thing as well. This is a dude, but okay, so these lines come from the inside of here, right? Okay, great. So the lines that I'm looking for, they come from the inside of this, like that. The rest I can smooth with my smooth directional, right? And here we don't have enough resolution to fix this yet, but this is like a triangle shape, really. And you have a bit that goes up towards on the inside of that. And when we add a little bit more resolution, that will be more apparent. So zoom out, let's grab our trim dynamic and open up, like holding Alt, I'm kind of bringing these folds back so that she doesn't look so wrinkled and so thin. And now this is coming together, and we're getting this shape, this blend of this shape coming up here, right? Interestingly, we have a bit of a shape here, so I can probably, if I wanted to, I could grab H polish and just kind of exaggerate this flat shape here, this flat thing. And usefully, you have this guy here that shows you the plane of the face. It can be useful sometimes. Now for the chin, depends what kind of chin you're doing. I sometimes do these butt chins because they're kind of easy. They're kind of easy to say, oh yes, that's a chin. I'll kind of ignore it for the moment. I'll look at the reference as well and look at these. So there's this, let me do a snip. There's these shapes going upwards here. And then there's this shape here, it's like this. And then you have this coming out here. And you might have seen some of this stuff on Pinterest before. So I'm gonna come in here, get my thingy down. So first I'm gonna do this side shape, this on the side here, which is useful for dimples and things. And that's essentially the start of this, creating these mouth volumes. You can pull this out like this now as well and create this volume. And I'm still using smooth directional. I should probably switch to normal smooth at this point, and just lower its strength. And I'm gonna lower, so I'm holding shift for normal smooth, I'm gonna hold space, lower the Z intensity just a bit and increase the focal shift, and now it's a much more focused smooth brush and it's not as easily destructive. So add this, and I added these ones going up, and now it's for the other shape, it's this big shape coming from here. And that's gonna create this softness and roundness to the mouth that is very appealing, and creates it, makes it essentially look kind of nice. And down here we have our chin, and our chin I won't push anything in, I'll just pull out a little bit. And down here, like a damn standard, a bit of a line to separate, and then just lightly smooth this stuff out. It's a bit exaggerated at the moment. I think the chin is a bit weird. I would pull it back a little bit probably. I'll create a more of a specific shape. Let's see what this does. Let's see how this goes. And then again, the butt chin, not necessarily what you need to go for. I'm going to grab H polish, get rid of that little butt, and also blend this a little. There we go. It is a stylized character after all. And a lot of the stuff you do at this stage, where it's a little bit more detailed, is looking at the light and shadow, similar to how you might do with painting. And you can add a thing like here. Okay, now we have a bit of a face. And at this point, it's kind of a standard face, right? There's not much going on with it. The nose is a bit funny. There's not too much going on. I could add ears at this point, and I think I might. But I would essentially save this as a version, then on top of it, I would try to push it towards something else. For a stylized character, having these big eyes is very useful. Now, I know that some of you don't want to do big eyes. I'm going to duplicate this for a moment. Let's reduce this down. Duplicate it and work on a duplicate so I don't lose the original. I know you might want to be showing your character's eyes, and that's alright as well. I'm going to insert a new sphere just because the old one I don't think is in the position I want it to be anymore. I'm going to get out of perspective mode for a moment, make the sphere small, turn on my transparency, make the sphere about the size of the space between the eyes and a little bit bigger, and then put it on one end and bring it back until it kind of almost seeps through. And you notice now this is a bit taking up quite a bit more, about here maybe, and you can squish it a bit as well. You can squish it a bit this way and a little bit this way, and that's a more natural look for the eye. Now we can go back to the face, and we can move the move or the clay, just make sure we're covering that area. And this inner bit, you've already I think you had already done it on the original, which is good. The inner bit of the eye is actually pushed in quite strongly. So if I select this front part of the face, reverse it, and then in my display properties, I'm just gonna click double for preview purposes, and let me go solo as well. This kind of, do you see this indent? Do you see this shape of it going in? And you have this point here sticking out from the face. This is the inside, the space between your eye and your nose that's going inwards quite a lot. And that's a space, that's a cavity that's quite far into your face. It looks like you've been drawing characters before, so your skull shape to begin with wasn't bad. It's just the way you were drawing the facial features were a bit tricky. Because if you had this to begin with, and I don't remember, maybe I pushed it in a little bit, but for everyone, this is an important defining feature of the face, having this protrusion essentially into your face between here. And I'm explaining it quite a lot. I wouldn't say like, oh, now I have to figure out how to make a protrusion. Like, don't worry about that, but just be aware that when you're making your face, when you first start, it's very flat. It's very like flat and you don't have anything, and pushing that little piece in can do a lot to essentially create the shape of the eye that you're going with, right? So I've opened it up so that we can see the eyeballs a bit better. I'm going to duplicate it again. I do a lot of duplicates when I'm sculpting because I want to use the I want to have versions, and also that's useful for your report as well because you can take screenshots of the versions. So now I'm going to come here, I'm going to grab the sculpt, I'm going to go here like this. One moment. And I'm back. I'm back, right? Yeah, I'm back. Okay, so we're going to add these eyebrow thingies here, just going to reverse so you see. So just add these little, as if you were creating a new eyelid, right? And I'm going to pull these out with dam standard a little bit as well. And the bottom eye, I see that it ended, so we don't need to really change the bottom part, we just want to get rid of this lid. And we can just do that with clay, and we can just push that until it goes behind the eye, right? And let me hide the other eyeball because we have two eyeballs at the moment. Where are they? Yeah, which one's the right one? I think this is the right one. Yeah. Yeah, this is the right one. This is the new one. So with clay, you can just push the eyelid away until you're left with the eye. And it's useful to do this as well because you're you can shape the eye more to where it needs to be. Now this, as I've said, is a stylized character and to an extent, and you want to make sure your eyes aren't too realistic and too big. And also, depending on the ethnicity of your characters, your eye can take a different shape. So for Europeans, the eye this lid goes quite further back into the head, and your lid actually does. Let me snip and show you and hide this one. So for not European is a general term, but for some people, especially people who don't have a epicanthal fold, the eyelid is here, and it will go all the way back here, and then it's going to come back up and like that. And when you close your eyes, you just have a bit of a fold, and it's here, right? For people who have epicanthal folds, and just to name one, people from Japan, for example, do have epicanthal folds. Not everyone from Asia have the same eyes, just to let you know. Even people as close as China and Korea, and China's bloody huge, by the way, even people as close as Japan and Korea have very different physiologies, and within the country itself people look different as well. But epicanthal folds is an anatomical thing. People have them in different ways and look in different ways, but the general idea is if you do have them and you're of certain ethnicities, instead of having this occur, you actually already have, and this will be easier to show from the front, and I'll do in a moment, you have a fold of skin that stays here, and it's taut. It's not tight, but it remains there. It's not necessarily stretched, but it remains there, and from there starts this process. And that is why sometimes also it's a bit easier to actually make characters who are of East Asian descent, because essentially it makes your job a little easier. You can be like, oh, I have an epicanthal fold. It can be something like this, and you would need to work into it to make it look realistic, but I have an epicanthal fold and my eyelid is underneath it, so I don't need to draw my eyelid. I can just do this, and it's like, oh, this is fine. This is but obviously this isn't fine, but essentially, yeah, you can what I mean is my quality wasn't up to scratch there, but what I mean is depending on the character you're doing, you might want to do the eyes in a different way. East Asian people's eyes can be easier to do in 3D, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should make everyone East Asian. Anyway, moving on. We've opened up the eyes. Let's grab the dam standard, pull them out a bit, grab our pinch brush, pull them out a bit, pinch brush, and pull them out a bit. Depending on the character you're going, depending on the style, you could also, let's pinch these as well. You could also create eyelids from separate geometry. So if you search Danny Mac on YouTube, so let's go on YouTube and let's go Danny Mac eyelids. He shows a way to essentially, and this one's like, oh wow, adverts, thank you. 2, 1, thank you. Shows how he does eyelids for his stylized characters, and he does it a slightly different way, where he does it pretty early on, and he has like separate spheres and the eyes inside it, and he actually shapes the spheres as eyelids. And as you go further, you'll see what he does, and essentially makes some very interesting stylized shapes for the eyes and the eyebrow. And by the end of it, he has something that he can dynamesh together, and you have like an interesting stylized look for his character. So this is another way you can create eyelids, and during that blockout phase as well. Now, I think I would leave this area for now, because the eyes are a whole thing you can focus on. For the moment, I would leave them. And I think the only other thing I want to kind of do is show you ears and work a little bit on the nose. So there's a few different ways you can do ears. One way, and also first you need to know where your ears sit. So your ears will likely sit from the top of your brow. Oops, that was not what I wanted to do. From the top of your brow, right, top of your brow, to roughly the bottom of your nose. So roughly this area, somewhere like that. If you have earlobes, if you have like kind of slightly danglier earlobes like me, it might go down to here, but essentially it starts from here, and from this place where your zygomatic process goes. And I've shown before in a video, if you draw an eye, and then draw the zygomatic process that goes around in the arch, draw your eyebrow, draw the cheekbone, draw your ear, you've pretty much made the whole face straight away. It'd be like nose, face, jaw, done. So just this eye and zygo is useful. Anyway, don't want to digress. Starting from here, you just make the little, you can do the little thing, which is where the little ear bit that's still connected to the face. And then from here you can, and I think that's a bit lower actually, it's here, so where the jaw is, goes like this, and then you have your, essentially the ear like this. And people have different ears, of course. So your ear could be, is necessarily in these, is in those proportions. You can mess around with it a bit if you're doing stylized stuff, but generally the ear is in those proportions. So I'm going to show you a few ways to do ears. One of them is you can just mask out where the ear is going to be, and then you can, and I think this is a bit much, then you can reverse that mask, put your pivot point on the end here, so I'm going to tap and click, and then I'm going to just pull it out like that. And then whilst it's still selected, I'm going to push or reverse it, and then I can kind of push this down and in to create that ear shape. And later on, when you dynamesh at a high resolution, you'll be golden. Right? And you could later dynamesh, and you can just get in here and you can start shaping the ear as you wish. So like I said, you have this little bit that's connected to the head more clearly, and you have this part that's kind of connected to the head. And then on the inside, you have the earlobe. And at this point, and I always still do this, I always need reference, and I need to look at how the ear is made. If I've just made one, I might remember, but generally the ear is, you kind of need reference for it. You need to remember what's going on there, because it's not an easy thing to make. Alright, so you could do it that way, and her ears are bloody massive now, but you can still F around with them and change them and do things. I don't use this method anymore. I used it in the very beginning when I started doing characters a while ago, second year maybe, or in the summer. I don't even remember. But anyway, that's an alright method, and it can be useful if you're in the blockout stage or dynamesh stage, or if you're just messing around making creatures. That's cool. What I generally do now is I actually insert a sphere or a cube, and I squish it, and oops, let's turn on local symmetry and perspective, and I squish it, right, and then I'll kind of put my pivot point at the start here, push it into the head a little bit, make sure it's like actually the right distance, push it in a bit, and then pull them out, and then use move. And they are separate object now, so it's a bit easier to manipulate, it's a bit easier to get this bit. I actually pull, if I just select these, I pull this area in so that I get this actual connection to the head. And the rest is again just looking at reference, making sure you get it all right. I'm actually looking at this as reference right now, which is not ideal. Look at proper reference. Look at stylized characters as well. Look at the Overwatch characters. Copy their styles. Utilize their styles in your work, and look at how they've done it and try and emulate it to an extent. I will do so in a moment. And this is still kind of blocky, so I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Allows me to go back and work on it later, and also I can now select it and reposition it, make sure it's where I need it, push it further forwards if I'm going to pull the jaw forwards, because right now the jaw is pretty long. I could probably, if I wanted to, like take this and just pull the jaw forwards a little bit so it's a little closer. I think I'll leave it for the moment. And you know, this isn't like finished, obviously, but I mean the head is as well. Like the head looks a little better, it looks a bit more human, but it's still not finished. I still need to do a bunch, look at it. I need to, I'm noticing stuff already, like, oh, you know, this is very thin here, and it's like a lot of things that I'm noticing, but you need to do that over time, refining the face and doing that. But you need to get the base facial features down, looking good first, looking close to acceptable, even if they don't look like the thing or person or creature that you're actually making yet. They have to make sense, they have to kind of look all right, and then you can mold them into something that you're actually aiming for. And I think I'm messing around with the ears more than I should be at this point, but it's annoying. It's like you start messing with the ears and you don't want to stop, because you're like, oh. And this is why you look at reference. Stop saying it and look at some reference, Stefan. Jesus Christ. Ears. Gosh. Ear. Also, you can do ear sculpture. And you can look at these as well. And they're useful to look at because they're stuff like this. Because they're things that people have already sculpted in real clay. And real clay is useful to look at that stuff. For these are not good. These are not good. Let me just search ear, and you're gonna get all this stuff, and you can just pick the one that you want to look at, and it's a bit gross, but just deal with it. I think this is fine. She's pushing it forwards a little, which isn't ideal. Lovely. Gosh, it's so gross. People have different ears as well. Notice she doesn't have a lobe. Some people don't. Some people do have a bigger lobe. Usually I just try to find one that's alright. Or you can just copy a specific person. And let's also do the other thing I said we'll do, which is look at Overwatch. After I stop fiddling with it. Okay, I'm gonna leave it for now. I'm gonna look at Overwatch as well. Overwatch. Give me something. Give me someone. Give me someone. I know this is fan art, but the ear looks pretty good. It sticks out quite a lot, doesn't it? Interesting. And you can look at the proper actual characters for the game. I can't see any of them now. They're very easy to spot usually as a digital 3D. Anyway, you can find them, you can do your research. I'm gonna send you another video of a guy that does a face from a skull. It's stylized, but it's still more realistic than what you're probably going for with Shane Olsen's style. This is also probably a bit more than what you're going for with Shane Olsen's style, but it gives you a nice foundation which you can then work on top of and stylize. Like I've said before, you need to understand reality before doing stylization, And usually if I'm doing a stylized character, I won't go this far into reality. I won't even really go into reality at all. But since you guys are new, it's useful to see this and see how it is, and then you can refine the character yourself to whatever style and extent you wish. But the point is, you need to get something that looks real to an extent, at least first. And over time you develop other techniques, and you'll be taught other techniques that allow you to create characters in a stylized fashion from scratch after you've started to kind of understand realism and the reality of it as well. I think I'll leave that as it is for now, and maybe all I'll do is very quickly and cheatily give a look if I can do a Dynamesh. Oh my god, 406. What? How big are your characters? I think your character's scale is too big, because you shouldn't have to go this high to get, or too small maybe? I think your character scale might be too small, because this is very odd. You shouldn't have to go this high to do a Dynamesh. Anyway, let's do a deformation. Let's do a little bit of polish. No, actually no polish, no polish. Let's do clay polish straight away from the start. Right? And you're getting these sharper lines now. And you can now grab your pinch and you can emphasize the lines that you need to retain for your character. And you can use H polish as well. You can use the move brush and kind of modify this to what you need it to be. Make sure your eyelid aren't actually going out too far. Let's grab our H polish. Polish this a bit. Get that shape back. Get a bit of this. The nose, you might notice, ooh, that's done too much. Let's do a pinch and hold Alt and see if we can do something about that. It's a bit better, and then we can just get a little bit of a smooth, teeny smooth, tiny smooth. Yeah. I should have gotten rid of this, because you don't actually see it in humans. You don't see it when you have like muscle and bone and skin and stuff, and fat. You won't see it. Yeah, that's a stylized face a bit. I think it's a bit sad. Or no, there are people that have eyes which are not. Is this not mirrored? Why are you not mirrored? I must have moved it by accident. Oh, I need to move this to fit it, like that. Right. But I do know people that have eyes like this. It's not weird, it's normal. They're just different people. Cool, I think that's all I need to cover for now. I think that's everything I wanted to show you. I don't want to confuse you with more information. That's perhaps, I don't know if it's a different method to what you've been learning. I don't know if it's going to help you with something that the techniques that you're being shown. I don't know if it's a different technique entirely. But those are the things that I would do to your character's face to kind of get them to where I would like it to be. And if I wanted to, I could go back and just show you step by step for each of them. I think for now I'm just going to flick through each one. And I'm going to duplicate this one and go back to the beginning of this. And actually I'll solo it as well. And now I can go for it. Okay, so you had your character and your skull shape was fine. Your orbit's location was fine. You had your eyes too far in. And there was a few other issues to do with like the nose sticking out too much and the mouth. You just didn't know how to approach the mouth, and that's fine. Don't worry about it. I showed you a technique, and the ears I smoothed. So let's start going through it. So went through and worked on the nose and kind of pushed that in a bit to create the nose shape, and then pulled the mouth out and smoothed it and created that area there. Pulled the chin and reshaped the chin and the jaw a bit so that it makes a bit more sense. Smoothed out the eye and made the arch, that arch there that I forgot the name of, to create the zygomatic process, which tells me where the ear is going to be and helps me create the cheekbone and outline the jaw a little better. Created some area, worked on the face a little bit there, making the jaw and all those bits have a nicer shape, making sure that the jaw to the cheekbone have this little connection, getting rid of some of the geometry on the side of the mouth where the teeth are. and which I later make bigger for the cheek. But for now I got rid of it to outline the skull, getting rid of some things on the back of the skull, pulling out the jaw sideways, again making that cheek area, refining it, putting some space on the mouth there, now starting to actually outline your eye orbits a little better. And I think I had a sphere in there over which I started building up the eyelid, and then using trim dynamic or H polish whilst holding Alt to create the connection there between the lid and the actual skull, and working on that area, creating those eye folds, creating that shape, that triangular shape in the face here. So creating that goes down there, then here creating the nose bridge, which is actual bone, and the thing after the nose bridge, after that line, all of that is cartilage. So your nose is cartilage, and then I worked on that and changed the shape a little, kind of refining it and doing what I can or what I think works for it. And some of that might have just been me and personal preference. Then working on the lids, pulling them out, eye folds, general refinements and reshaping. Created those like little lines here to essentially create this butterfly thing, and then creating these little brow areas that define the center of the face a bit more, and pulling the skull back a little bit to kind of create a little bit of a slant, and this being kind of a flatter area. Like I said before, the actual shape is pretty good. Like if I go right back to the beginning, like your shape is not bad, but the details, we just essentially needed to fix the nose a little bit, get rid of the mouth, get rid of the ears, and then pull your eyes out a little and start drawing the lids. And drawing the lids is really useful. It helps you see. As soon as you draw the lids, you start seeing, oh, this is a human, this is a face. You can start literally looking at it and being able to see the expression. So drawing the lids this way, I do recommend, it can be quite useful, even if you get rid of them afterwards, just to let you see it human-ish in the beginning. So I drew these lines for the mouth, and then with damp standard, and then I pulled them out and pulled down the bottom, and then we started pulling the face out entirely, refining and softening the areas in between and pushing them in with damp standard, and then kind of pulling out these that actually create volumes there, and you see it with these shadows here quite well, and creating these volumes, refining the mouth, I think. And she's gonna look quite old in the beginning because first she looks too skinny, or essentially she literally doesn't have any flesh there, and then we start adding it and she looks quite thin and wrinkled, which is fine, because after that we're going to start smoothing these transitions. Do I do anything else before that? I think I'm just reshaping a bit and smoothing a bit, and then I move it up because it's quite low. It's like, ooh, ooh. And some of these things you can't notice until you just give yourself a hunch and you're like, oh, there's quite a lot of space in between here, let me like reduce it, and now it's quite much better centered, and your chin is a little bit longer than this space, it appears. I think I was looking at how these things come from the center bit, not from the outer bit. And here I've started now pulling in these shapes and essentially blending these two different areas of the face with fat and skin. And then we start creating these little areas of the face, little fat pads around the mouth, using mouth clay sculptures as reference, because they usually emphasize those quite well, and we can kind of see them much more clearly than we can from a human, from a real person or a photograph. And here, like, that one's a pretty useful one that essentially creates this, and you're like, oh, okay, that's a mouth now. The chin I was messing around with, created that little butt chin, added that little cut there to emphasize the difference, softening a bit, then creating like more of actual chin shape down here, and changing that. And after that, I can't remember what we did. We changed the eyes a bit, and then we opened the eyes. I think we changed the nose here a little because it's still a bit buff there, and then we like lower it down a bit, So we opened up the eyes, and I'll take off solo now. I'll hide the head, and hide the body as well to see it as a head. It looks looks pleasant. And we took off the eyes there, and I think after that we just gave it a polish. So this first one, apart from some minor tweaks to the nose and eyes that I did afterwards, that thing I just went through the process of. That was pretty much everything. And doing that little polish and doing some pinching and some H polish at the end after the clay polish kind of gave me this interesting look. Still, and I'd even say, you know, depending on what you're actually going for, before you do that clay polish, you could mess around with it a bit more. I thought for me, the base shapes were there enough, and the clay polish brought it to the stage that I wanted. Arguably, this could be pushed up a little bit, but, you know, very arguable. I might leave it. Or maybe this could be like just pushed up. Let's look at it from above. Yeah, arguable. I'll leave it. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I hope that helps. As usual, any questions, you know what to do. Have a good one, and thanks a lot. In a bit. Bye bye.